Good evening. My name is Sue Piper. I am chairman of the board of United Policyholders. I'm also a 1991 Oakland Hills firestorm survivor. So we have some people here, the women out front who helped sign you in, Carolyn Burgess and Jillian Cervais, are also 1991 fire survivors. And our other speakers for the evening are Gail Van Buren, who's a licensed family marriage therapist, and Bill Hedden, who's a former chair of the board of United Policyholders. And tonight we're going to talk about the stress, how to cope with the stress of recovery. How many of you have been to other Roadmap to Recovery workshops? Okay, so then I'm going to do the next bit very quickly, just in case some of you haven't. Just so you know, we're a nonprofit. United Policyholders has been around since 1991. In fact, they were so helpful to me and the 3,500 other people who lost their homes in 1991 that when I retired 5 years ago, I offered to join the board, and here I am, chairman of the board. Their 26-year track record, they've helped thousands of survivors of earthquakes, floods, hurricanes, landslides, gas explosions, and wildfires, and they've learned a thing or two about how the insurance process should work in recovery and what can go wrong. And so that's the kind of information we share with you because we want you to be informed consumers. We do not take any money from insurance companies. I know our name's a little confusing, but we are a consumer advocacy organization. And we're funded by donations and grants, and we're very small. We're based in San Francisco. We've got 4.5 employees, and the rest of us are volunteers, and everyone here tonight is a volunteer. Most of you have gotten the yellow book. Have any of you not gotten our little yellow book? If not, we've extra copies out front. They're very, very helpful. They give you tips right away. It's very practical, and of course, it's got the wonderful inventory if you still need it. We have an Ask an Expert forum. If you haven't used it, you might find it helpful. You go to our website, look for Ask an Expert. You can register, it's free. You can get advice from volunteers who are experts in construction or legal things, or insurance or disaster recovery, and your name stays private, but it's information for you. And we have, of course, on our web, information that's available 24/7. You can go to the section that's for the North Bay wildfires, and there are PDF files of important information. There are YouTube videos of all the previous Roadmap to Recovery workshops. So if you missed one, you can look at it, or you can refresh your memory by looking at it again. So there's all sorts of information available to you on the website. When you came in, we gave you a half sheet of paper. How many of you know about the survey that we're doing? Okay, about 600 people have signed up so far. If you haven't filled out the survey, we ask that you do. We do one at 6 months and a year, and the information helps us look for trends and help develop policy working with this Department of Insurance and other people. So it's really important. We ask that not only you fill it out, but ask your friends and neighbors who are also survivors to please fill it out because the information is really, really helpful to us. So tonight's programs, I'm going to start with talking about strategies to heal and deal. And then Bill Hedden is going to talk a little bit about when you're dealing with, I guess it's insurance and you're overwhelmed. And then we'll do Q&As. And if you've been to our workshops before, we ask that you meet in support groups by your insurance company because we think that's very helpful. And we have signs all around. You just head to your corner. Once again, this is guidance, general guidance. We're not giving legal advice. We don't endorse or warrant any of the sponsors who are listed on our website. We just give information. And as I said before, we're all volunteers. So as I said, I lost my home in 1991. My husband, 3 young children and dog were in the 1991 Oakland Hills firestorm, which up until your fire was considered the worst urban wildfire disaster in the country, and is still considered the second worst. 3,500 people lost their homes, 25 people died. And all around us looked like the pictures you see of bombed out London in World War II. The only difference was we had Weber fire grills that survived the fire. I speak tonight, though, not as chairman of the board of United Policyholders, but as someone who has walked in your shoes, along with Jillian Cervais and Carolyn Burgess out front, who are also 1991 firestorm survivors. And it's our sincere hope that by sharing what we learned in our recovery experience, we can give you not only strategies and tools, but hope. This probably is a familiar looking photo if you've taken photos of your family. You can see my husband and I smiling, but the kids aren't too happy because inside we were hurting. A few months later, we did an Easter egg hunt. These are my twins who were then 4 years old. They're now 30. We always did an Easter egg hunt around our house. We did one in the ruins of the fire. And it's important because we wanted this experience to be part of our family legacy. And we captured it for posterity. I think cataloging your experience through photographs is healing, and they do become part of your family history. The most important thing to think about when you're going through stress like this is to be kind to yourself. You can add your own descriptor here. I say it's been a roller coaster of a few months. You may have different words that you use here. It's been tough. Be as gentle and forgiving and kind to yourself and your family as possible, because this is a very stressful time. For those of you who are navigating this solo, where you're not in a relationship, you need to know that while you're solo, you're not alone. There are lots of other people who are going through this with you. And there are people all around who are willing to help. If you look for the glass half full, it helps a lot. If you laugh, it helps a lot. You can find good support. There are church groups, synagogues, community groups. We have information outside, and Gail's going to talk about some support groups that are out there here for this community. Even your insurance support group can be very helpful, because these are people who are dealing with maybe not exactly the same thing, but very similar to what you're going through. And then also, you want to take care of yourself. You want to eat healthy food. You want to understand that water can be a powerful healer. And get a massage or a mani-pedi or something. I mean, once in a while, pamper yourself, because you deserve it. For those in relationships, you have to understand that people process things differently. And don't let the fire destroy your relationships. In my family's case, look at me. I have red hair. You know about redheads. We're supposed to be very emotional. And I am about the little things. But when it's a big thing, I get very calm. And my husband is very calm. But during the fire or afterwards, we switched roles. And that was very disconcerting. We had been married for 20 years, and all of a sudden we were acting differently. For us, choosing furniture and the decor for our new house became the sore point. We'd been married for 20 years, and up until then, I pretty much chose the decor. But after the fire, my husband decided he was going to be more assertive. He wanted an architectural digest kind of house, and I was practical, and we had 3 little kids. I didn't want an architectural digest house. So this was about a year after the disaster, and it was very disconcerting for us. So fortunately, in our community, we had group therapy available for free, and we took advantage of it a year after the fire. And in our sessions was another couple, 20 years older than us, same issues. They had switched roles. They had been married longer than we had, and it was just really tough on them. We learned that we weren't alone, that we should be flexible, and that we needed to communicate. Don't forget your children. In this picture, my kids were, at this point, 9 and 4. My kids had difficulty dealing with the fire. My oldest daughter was 9. After the fire, she slept with the light on every night for months. And she wouldn't get near a stove until she was in high school. She had cleaned her desk out from school that Friday before a fire, which was on a Sunday, and she put everything in a plastic bag. That plastic bag were her sole possessions, and they went everywhere. When we went to a restaurant, we went to church, whatever, they went with her. Our son, who was 4 at the time, told me just before we were getting ready to move to the new house 2 years later, when this house burns and we move across the street, and I said, wait a minute. You don't move just because your house burned. But that's the way he saw it, because that's what he knew. So kids process information differently than adults, and you need to be sure you're paying attention. I found that talking about the situation with my children in a matter-of-fact way, even with my 4-year-old twins, help them to recognize our family's new normal. This was just part of our family experience, and we were working our way through it. Now my kids are in their 30s. They understand. All of them have emergency go kits and important information stored in the clouds. They recognize that when you choose to live in harm's way, you must be responsible and be prepared. When you look on our website, there are some information under Survivor Speaks website, and there is a statement from a teenager who talks about her experience as a teenage fire survivor that you might find very helpful. You have to realize that your home is your home, but really, you are your home. It's what you carry around with you that makes you whole. Giving lots of hugs can really help. Personal contact is very, very helpful. And you get it back in spades. If you greet people with a smile, it'll make you feel better. You can listen to soothing music. You can lose yourself now and then in a good book or a good movie. And remember that you're not alone, even though it feels that way frequently. Connecting with other fire survivors can be very helpful. As I said before, your insurance groups people, if you have AAA, for example, and you meet with them, you're going to share information, and that's a cohort that you will get to know, and they can be very, very helpful to you. In San Diego, they formed support groups, and because it just seemed to fit there, they had men's groups and women's groups that were separate, because that's worked well there. Whatever works for you, where people feel comfortable, but just realize that people process stress differently, and their needs for support may be different. Friends and family can be helpful, but they can't be mind readers, and you need to let them know where you could use their help. So there are things that they can do. They can do research for you, they can sort through old photographs, they can send you photographs from their stash of photographs. There are things that they can do, they want to help, but they need your direction. We talk about this being your new normal, and it's because life, keeps moving forward. And even though you may talk about wanting to get back to the way it was, well, that was yesterday, and today is today, and it's part of your life. So the goal is to incorporate this in a positive way in your life and to move forward, and to make this part of your family's legacy. I told you I took a lot of pictures, and I talked about it with my kids, and it was just part of our life experience. But recognize you're not going to go back to the way it was before, because that's not where you are. So as we said before, learn to ask for help. I learned this when I had twins. You can't do it all by yourself, so learn to ask for help. And it's not easy, but you will have a chance to pay it forward. As I said, that Carolyn and Jillian and I are here. We lost our home 26 years ago. There are a bunch of us from Oakland who have come up here to staff these tables because it's our way of giving back. We know what you've been through, and we feel a real driving need to help you out and give back because people were helpful to us. And someday down the road, you'll be there too. As we said, connect to others who are in your situation. I think, Carolyn, you were telling me that you would go to the Safeway.
I'm Carolyn Burgess, and I'm still single. I was single when it happened in '91, the fire. And as I traveled through this journey, as Sue was saying, it was very interesting being a single woman going through this process, having to deal with the insurance companies. I had 8 different adjusters during the process, and some were from out of state, Texas, Illinois, Maine, and so their perspective was very different. I don't know if you're having this experience or not. Oh, yes, you are, okay. The good news was I didn't have to argue with anybody over what color tile I was going to put in the house. I would hear couples arguing over that, and I thought, I only have me to deal with. Now, on some hands, that's okay, and on other hands, it's not, because it's awfully nice to have a partner but do remain partners. Let me see. And Safeway. The first. I lived with my brother for a while and his wife and daughter, and because I was so upset all the time, they asked me to leave because I was upsetting their daughter, and my sister-in-law had a stomachache all the time because of, just the sorrow she felt for what I was going through. And when I was strong enough, I was able to get an apartment. And so when I moved into this apartment with my lamp that I had bought, and I had to wait around for the bed to be delivered, I went to Safeway to get a few things. And there he was in Safeway, and suddenly it hit me that I had to get salt and pepper and napkins and all these things that you're going through now, or have gone through. And I cried right in the middle of Safeway. And people walked around me. I was living in San Francisco then, and it wasn't real obvious, who I was and what I'd been through, other than this woman who's crying in the middle of herbs and spices. So it is important to allow yourself that openness with yourself and to learn how to embrace yourself. And I had wonderful friends that I have learned to accept help. And they gave me a shower without the groom. And so they brought lots of things that I could use. And, well, didn't have anything. And I now know the age of all my clothes. Only my clothes are older now. But at the time, it was a real process for people that have been independent like you. So I say, give yourself time. I ended up being the first one back on my block. I didn't want to be, but things were happening. People all of a sudden didn't have contractors that were going to be able to provide the service that they said they were. And so I ended up being the first one back. And after I moved in, now I had a lamp and a TV and a cardboard box for a table. And I thought, what am I doing here? Why have I done this? And it took a long time for my neighborhood to come back, because it wasn't just me that was rebuilding, it was the entire area. And so you're not only going to be dealing with yourself, you're going to be dealing with Joe and Mary down the street, and maybe they're not going to start building 4 or 5 years. So it is a reminder, but also you become a support for them, and that you can do these things. So, good luck. It's survivable. Sometimes you don't think it's going to be, but, here we are.
So we talk about letting yourself have time to mourn, because this is a major life-changing event. And then, of course, find humor. I think about the night after the fire, I said to my husband, oh, we don't have to worry about the dry rot on the deck or the hole in the carpet that the dog chewed through anymore, because I always used to worry, what am I going to do when I sell the house? I'm going to have to recarpet the whole thing, right? You have to laugh, because the alternative is really so awful. Some of the things that we find that are very helpful, you could, if you journal or keep a diary, some people write poetry, getting exercise, keeping yourself healthy, showing gratitude, helping others. Meditation can be helpful when you're really feeling stressed, getting counseling, and art can be very helpful. This is a quilt that I made. I had made a quilt like this before the fire, but it was about half the size. And I always used to think, oh, I made it too small. Well, then the fire occurred, and I thought, oh, I can make it right now. And I did this a year after the fire. My husband and I are big gardeners, but of course we were living in a place where we didn't have a garden, so this became my garden. These are my favorite flowers. It hangs in my house. And actually, when you were having your fire, and I said to my son, here's what I want you to take if we have to evacuate because we're having red flag days. And oh, please remember to take the quilt off the wall. That's the quilt I want to take with me. So I made some art out of it, and I look at it, and it's very important to me. It was very healing to me to do it. This is art from salvaged copper. It was made by Jillian Cervase's late husband. It was from copper from the properties around them, and they made it into a gate. And then, of course, when you really are feeling overwhelmed, it's time to seek professional help. It's not the time to tough it out. I found that when we were ready to move back, and we rebuilt our house very quickly, we were moved back 2 years to the day of the fire. That's very, very fast. But in the weeks before we were to move back, my 9-year-old, then 11-year-old daughter and I were not sleeping at night. And we said to each other, it's our mind letting go. You know, we're just sort of reliving it, and we're going to let it go so we can move back to our house. And it was sort of our way of bringing closure to it. There are different opportunities for individual therapy, couples counseling. You can need it now, or as I said, we used it a year afterwards. Everybody's different, but you know, give yourself permission for that. So one of our themes is, this is part of your new family history, and you should celebrate when you can. It's a long process. You're going to make new memories, and you want to celebrate victories along the way that will give you the emotional strength and to keep on going. So here's what some people have done. There are families that have celebrated with groundbreaking parties, with stud parties as they're framing their house. People writing on the studs the words of the moment, whatever, for posterity. This one says, a woman's place is in the bathtub. May you have walls for the wind and a roof for the rain and drinks besides the fire, laughter to cheer you, and those you love near you, and all that your heart may desire. It's a Celtic blessing. We have a whole section on our website from survivors like me, but from other fires, because there have been plenty of them over the last 26 years, who have different topics they talk about, including the one I talk about from Robin Walery, who was a 15-year-old when the fire occurred in Colorado. But these might be helpful to you to hear how other people resolve them. And of course, if you have a particular question, you can go to our website and ask it. And now, Bill Hedden.
How's everybody doing tonight? I'm Bill Hedden. I actually was on the board of the United Policyholders for 20 years. I started in 1996 and ended in December of 2016, and I spent the last 2 years as the chairman. Sue is one of the successors. I believe really strongly in this organization, and I'm glad to see everyone here tonight. This organization does absolutely amazing work, and this is just a small piece of it, quite frankly. I was contacted yesterday by the director, Amy Bach, to be here tonight. I happen to be here all day, so I said, okay, I'll stay a little later. But I'm looking at these topics for the first time this morning. But on the very first one, negotiation dynamics between insureds and adjusters. I'd like to make one little technical correction. I take the S off of insured, or insureds. I take the S off. It's an insured, and it's whether you're a husband and wife or a family, partners, whatever the situation is, you're just the insured under the policy. But, on the other hand, as was alluded to a little bit earlier tonight, the insurance company has adjusters. And they have an adjuster for additional living expenses. They have an adjuster for personal property. They have an adjuster for the dwelling. Then they have an in-house adjuster that sort of coordinates all those adjusters. They've got adjusters sometimes that are outside the company completely, called independent adjusters. And some of these adjusters have lots of experience, and some of them are rookies. Some of them are out of the area, some are relocating temporarily. It's a myriad of people that the insured has to deal with in this process. I'd also start by saying, I wouldn't really be negotiating much at this point. I'd be still in the documentation stage, and as one gentleman that has been at one of my presentations before in the back there, the devil is in the detail. So you document, it's your claim and it's your loss, and you document it the best you can in the most detail that you can, and you present your claim. And there shouldn't be much of a negotiation. They don't know what you've lost, you do. They live out of the area most of the time. You don't. You're here. This is it. And you bought insurance to make you financially whole. And so you don't stop until you feel like you're financially whole. Now that may depend to some extent on the coverages that you have and whether or not you're amply insured for your loss or underinsured. And that's going to play a huge role in the claim settlement negotiation process. I think, when dealing with these multiple myriad adjusters, you have to make sure that there's continuity. So when adjusters are changing, if there's certain important things that you had either verbally or otherwise agreed to with a prior adjuster, you want the new adjuster to be put on notice right away of those important aspects of your claim so that you have the continuity and you don't lose positive momentum. Because that's oftentimes why the insurance companies, change adjusters multiple times. It's to frustrate the insured. And you have to be able to kind of power through it. And one of the ways you can do it is making sure that you've created continuity and you've successfully documented your claim. Let me take a peek at some notes here. How many here feel like your claim is being handled properly at this point? A show of hands? There's not many. Wow. You're not really sure, are you? Yeah. You don't have any experience with this, I'm assuming, and most of you have never experienced any loss like this before. And you don't really have the experience. So you don't really know if your claim's being handled properly. So that's why I would suggest that you sort of try and take control of your claim if you can, and be diligent about the process. How many people here, I'm assuming everybody here has gotten their demolition and debris removal squared away and that part's handled. Is there anybody here that hasn't had that part of the claim dealt with either privately or with FEMA? So that part's done, and it's not done. Okay, but do you feel like it's under control in the sense that it will be dealt with at some point appropriately? So, what you need to do is you put parts of the claim behind you, That was one of the very threshold issues that most people had to deal with, and now most of those issues have gone away. It's very helpful. The next part of the claim that hopefully most of you have been able to kind of get squared away, I'm hoping, and put behind you is the additional living expense, your temporary housing, if you will. And so these are all the little steps of the claim that, hopefully you can deal with and put behind, and you make the task a little smaller every time you get one of these little aspects of the claim concluded. I'm hoping that most of you have probably gotten large sums of money from your insurance carrier for most of the large parts of your claim, whether it's the dwelling or the personal property. And so you're dealing with smaller parts of that. And so these are the parts that kind of can make it manageable. And, it's not as daunting. Has anybody here, how many, show of hands of how many people think they're, say, grossly underinsured? Okay. In those instances, have you gotten 100% of your coverage or close to it from the carrier yet? I'm not seeing many hands. Well, that's a little disconcerting. So we're going to do a question and answer at the end. So if anybody specifically individually has a question regarding that, or even after this, I'll stay a little longer. I've got a 2-hour drive ahead of me tonight, but I'll stay a little longer, and I'd be happy to help anybody if I can with some pointers and some tips, because that to me would be a disconcerting situation. I think probably there is some frustration in dealing with your insurance company, everybody's individual insurance company, because you're probably talking to other people with other insurance companies that have other insurance companies, and that insurance company is handling it completely different than your insurance company on certain aspects of it. And I know I'm a licensed public insurance adjuster, and I don't normally advertise that kind of thing when I'm speaking to a group like this, because it's not because of that I'm here. I've got multiple clients up here, and it's frustrating for me because I have a client telling me, so-and-so just got 100% of their personal property limit, and I've only gotten 75% of mine. The deal is, the policy of insurance is a contract. And you're stuck, you've got a contract with one company, and what other company does, their business, and you have to deal with the cards that you're dealt. And so that's another dynamic that can be, and if you, as this organization does, it can be beneficial if you do organize in groups, because the power of information, because if one insurance company for one person is doing something, and that same insurance company is doing something different for another claimant of that company, then you've got some, ammunition to be able to go back and say, hey, this person had State Farm, I've got State Farm, why are you treating me differently? And so banding together in groups can be very, very helpful when it comes to that, because there's different adjusters for every company, and a lot of times the company policy doesn't get disseminated properly to all the adjusters all the time, or as timely, and so things change. And that's another big dynamic, if you will. The next topic is, how do you know when you're in over your head or hit a wall and need outside help? That's probably the day after the loss occurred. Because you don't have any experience in dealing with it, and you don't know whether you're in over your head. A lot of people here, I'm sure, work full-time, and this is something that they can do, only part-time. It's a very, very daunting experience, especially if you don't have any experience. I've handled over 900 claims in almost 30 years. And I can tell you that every single new claim I get is a daunting experience for me. And I believe I have an abundance amount of knowledge and information at my fingertips, and it's still daunting for me. So I can't imagine what it would be like for all of you that probably have never had any experience. So I would reach out. You're here tonight, and most of you indicated you've been at other seminars. This is a valuable tool to help you maybe not feel so overwhelmed and not to feel like you're hitting the wall. When I first saw this morning, I thought to myself, well, a lot of marathon runners hit the wall. This is a marathon. This is not a sprint. It's something that takes a long time to deal with, all the way through, the rebuilding process, and most of the claims will stay open and until you've actually permanently relocated, whether you've purchased a new home or you've rebuilt your home. But you have to break it down into components. Marathon runners, I'm not one, but I've talked to a few, They tell you that there's different parts of the race. It's the first 5 miles, it's the middle 10 miles, it's the last, and every single one, once they get through it, they can get to the next stage. And I alluded to that a little bit in the first topic. Break down your claim into components, and deal with one at a time. Deal with the demolition and debris removal. Deal with your temporary living situation. Deal with getting an estimate for the rebuilding of your home. Deal with the personal property. You don't have to do them all at the same time. That could make it much more difficult. And it is a marathon. I have claims. I can give you an example of somebody that didn't have a total loss to their home. And it's been almost 2 years, and their house is almost rebuilt. This was a sizable loss. But we still have not submitted the personal property claim. You don't have to submit that in the first 60 days. Take your time. Focus on something that's more of a threshold issue, like the rebuilding of your home and getting the estimate on your home. And then, let the personal property wait a while. It's not critical that you just rush to do everything. And haste makes waste sometimes. So if you can break down the components of your claim and tackle them sort of one at a time, and I think, you won't be as overwhelmed. And I don't really know I would imagine most of you feel like you're already overwhelmed and have from the very beginning, and I appreciate that. And I would say if you are feeling a little overwhelmed, there's no, problem with seeking out help. And we've got help here tonight, and it takes all different forms. It could be a friend, it could be a relative, it could be a public adjuster, God forbid, and it could be an attorney, it could be your church, and these are the resources you have so that you may not hit the wall and feel so overwhelmed. I have given several of these workshops for this situation and other situations, and I've also probably consulted with 50 to 100 people either by phone or in person for an hour or so to help them sort of gather their thoughts and get a framework for handling their claims. And I'm available to talk. There's other public adjusters that have significant experience that are available to talk. I don't charge for an hour of my time, and I'm here now. I would be open to, there's not a ton of people in the room tonight, but I'd be open to giving some people my phone number, and I would be happy to talk to you if there's little aspects of your claim that you're frustrated with and so on and so forth, that just give you some free advice, okay? There's also attorneys out there. You need to distinguish whether or not you've got coverage, issues or valuation issues that you're struggling with. Coverage issues would be the insurance company telling you, well, you're not covered for $15,000 of business personal property that you have in your home. You're only covered for $2,500 of it. Well, what do you do about the other $12,500? Well, that's considered a coverage issue, and you might need legal advice. If you have a valuation issue, then you might be able to seek somebody out that can help you with the valuation issues. Contractors are good resources if you have a contractor that's a friend, or a friend has a good contractor that's a friend, to be able to help you document your dwelling replacement cost loss.